Sav, you recommended the Watchmen comic to me. What's it about?
So, Watchmen was written by Alan Moore, drawn by Dave Gibbons, and colored by John Higgins in 1986. It's set in an alternate version of 1985 America, where history is different because superheroes exist. For example, the US won the Vietnam War thanks to Dr. Manhattan, and Nixon's still president, serving his 5th term.
Wait, so instead of Ronald Reagan, Nixon's still president in 1985?
Yep, and there's a bunch of other changes too, like a lot of Indian immigrants came to the USA, which led to stuff like a restaurant chain called Gunga Diner. Most of the early masked heroes were just regular people in costumes. Some were super well trained or had slight superhuman stuff, but they all got outlawed in 1977. Only 2 were allowed to keep working for the government. One was Dr. Manhattan, and the other was the Comedian.
Why were they the only exceptions?
Dr. Manhattan's the only real superhero. He is a matter manipulator and experiences the past, present, and future all at once. Basically, he's like a walking nuke, which gives the US a massive edge during the Cold War. And the Comedian was the guy who did all the government's dirty work without asking questions.
Is Dr. Manhattan really that powerful?
Oh yeah, he's super overpowered. He's kind of like Molecule Man, if you know who that is. Except in this world, no one even comes close to matching Dr. Manhattan in terms of power. Anyway, superheroes also changed pop culture. Like Silk Spectre became a model, a sex symbol that criminals didn't even mind being arrested by, and Ozymandias built one of the most powerful conglomerates in the world. Also, as a result of this world having actual superheroes, people lost interest in comics about them, and pirate comics became the norm.
Pirate comics? That's unexpected, not even mangas or something else.
Yeah, we see someone reading a pirate comic called Tales of the Black Freighter, and its story goes hand in hand with the main one, kind of mirroring one of the characters' journey. It won't really click properly till you read the whole thing though. Till then it will feel like pointless fluff. Anyway, thanks to Dr. Manhattan, New York has crazy futuristic stuff like electric cars.
That's a really interesting world. Can you summarize a bit of the story?
So the first chapter opens up with a bloodstained Smiley lying in a gutter. We get a journal entry from Rorschach dated October 12, 1985, where he's basically ranting about how the city's morally rotting. The big thing in this chapter is the investigation of Edward Blake's murder. He got thrown through a window with strong glass, and the detectives realized he was a very muscular and heavy guy, like a wrestler, meaning whoever could throw such a man out of it must have been either insanely powerful or there were multiple assailants.
What's up with the smiley?
It belonged to Blake. The smiley face itself symbolizes goodness and purity, and the blood on it symbolizes violence and corruption of that idea. It's like Alan Moore's subtle way of saying he's going to mess with the traditional superheroes are pure and good idea. Anyway, one of the detectives mentions he's worried a masked hero might show up to investigate, but the other reminds him that masked heroes have been illegal since 1977, and only Rorschach still operates illegally.
Who's Rorschach?
I'll talk more about him later. For now, just imagine a mix of Batman and Punisher, but way more unhinged and financially broke. Later that night, Rorschach breaks into Blake's apartment and finds Blake's old costume, weapons, and a photo of a superhero group. Then he goes to Dan Drayberg, aka Night Owl 2, to inform him about Blake's murder and to warn him.
Warn about what?
Rorschach thinks someone's targeting masked heroes, and he tells Dan. Dan's kinda skeptical, saying Blake made a ton of enemies from his government work. This is also where we learn the comedian's real name was Edward Blake.
Wait, so the comedian is the guy who got murdered?
Yes, the smiley was actually part of his costume. After all, he's called the Comedian. Rorschach also goes to visit Adrian Veidt, aka Ozymandias, who had already retired 2 years before masked heroes were outlawed. Ozymandias, just like Night Owl 2, says it was likely just a political killing, saying the comedian was basically a Nazi. But Rorschach defends Blake, saying he served his country without cashing in on his reputation, which sounds like a jab at Ozymandias, since he turned his masked hero fame into a business and even sold action figures of himself.
Makes sense. If our world had superheroes, many would probably create businesses out of their fame like influencers do.
Anyway, after that, Rorschach heads to the Rockefeller Center to meet Dr. Manhattan and Laurie, formerly known as Silk Spectre 2, to warn them as well. On his way there, Rorschach basically vents about how disappointed he is in the other masked heroes and how only a few of them are still alive, active, healthy, and without personality disorders.
Damn, that's a sad ending for those people.
Yeah, I doubt any of them saw that kind of future coming. Anyway, After Rorschach warns Dr. Manhattan, he replies saying he was informed of the comedian's death by the government already. Laurie chimes in, saying she always hated Blake and that he deserved it, calling him a monster and even mentioning that he once tried to rape her mom, the original Silk Spectre. Rorschach, being Rorschach, makes an insensitive comment about not judging the moral lapses of men who died serving their country, which obviously pisses Laurie off, and then Dr. Manhattan just teleports Rorschach away for upsetting her.
That's one intense way to start the story, but what's the overall story like? And what themes does it go over?
The story follows these characters as we slowly get to know their past, their flaws, and what really drives them. Meanwhile, there's this constant tension from the threat of nuclear war between the US and the Soviet Union, plus the possibility that Rorschach might actually be right about the masked hero killings. It shows what our world might be like if real superheroes existed. There's a ton of little details that seem random at first but end up maturing later.
So it's not for casual readers?
Yep, you'll find something new every time you reread it. It deals with serious themes like existentialism, the effects of war, nuclear weapons, and how power can corrupt. It'll definitely make you think. But yeah, it's for mature readers. It doesn't shy away from gore, nudity, or mentions of rape. It's actually the comic that made people start taking the medium seriously and helped normalize dark themes in comics. It's a big reason why stuff like Invincible and The Boys can exist today. It even got a lot of adults into comics back then.
Yeah, it sounds intense but immersive. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, same for me because the world building is subtle but really well done. It even includes in-world stuff like fictional books, newspapers, and magazines between chapters to make the world feel more real and add extra context. Some readers might find those parts a bit dense, though. And yeah, a few subplots feel like they're mostly there to make a point. If you're just reading for entertainment, it's easy to miss the deeper layers. Anyway, at its core, Watchmen is basically a deconstruction of the superhero genre. The heroes are morally gray, there's a lot of political commentary, and it explores the real-world consequences of having actual superheroes.
Who would you say would like or dislike this comic?
It's best for anyone who enjoys detailed, in-depth stories that don't hold your hand. If you like works that make you think and maybe even teach you something, this is for you. It's not really for those who just want a quick, entertaining read without paying much attention. It can be fun, but it also feels like a grind at times because of how dense it is. I didn't always feel super emotionally engaged either. It made me analyze more than actually feel what was happening, especially since I had to Google a ton of outdated terms or historical events and people I didn't know about.
So it's kind of like reading classic literature?
In a way, yes. The quality of the writing definitely makes it feel like classic literature, in my opinion. There's a ton of symbolism too, like the Cold War tensions shown through the Doomsday Clock and Rorschach's black and white mask, reflecting both his rigid worldview and how the whole story acts like a Rorschach test for the reader. It explores the nature of heroism, morality, and the value of human life, presenting a bunch of contrasting philosophies and leaving you to form your own opinion. A lot of the themes are still super relevant today and probably will be for a long time. The ending is open-ended too, so you're left to decide how you feel about it.
The characters sound interesting. Can you briefly go over them and who the main character is? Is it Dr. Manhattan or Rorschach?
The story doesn't really have one main character, but Rorschach is probably the closest. We see a lot of his perspective, follow him as he investigates the murder, and learn why he is the way he is. All the main characters are well-written, complex, and flawed. Unlike typical comics, it shows that people who take justice into their own hands while wearing costumes likely have issues. Rorschach is presented as a more realistic take on a character like Batman. He's financially broke, psychologically disturbed, and has no issue killing or using brutal methods against people he deems evil. He never compromises on his principles, even if it hurts him or makes his life unbearable. Few characters in fiction are as principled, but the difference is those principles are usually morally agreeable. His morality, on the other hand, is rigid and black and white, shaped by his traumatic past. That trauma led him to believe the world is random and godless, and that people are either purely good or purely evil. Dr. Manhattan sees all of time at once, leading him to believe in a predetermined future, seeing free will as an illusion. This makes him distant, cold, and uninterested in humanity, saying we are all puppets. He can simply see the strings. Night Owl too is extremely smart. In his masked hero days, he engineered a ton of useful devices and a versatile flying L-ship. Now, after retirement, he is embarrassed by his past, realizing it didn't truly make the world better, but feels powerless in civilian life, nostalgic for the good old days. Silk Spectre 2 is portrayed as the most normal, never really wanting the superhero life. Her story looks at identity and legacy, but she and her mother, the original Silk Spectre, are often defined by the men in their lives. Her character was the least developed, working more as a plot device for male character development than anything else and relying on others for most of the story.
So she's yet another badly written female character?
Sort of. Don't get me wrong, her traumas are shown, but she doesn't have any standout characteristics besides the fact that Dr. Manhattan and one more character loved her, and she mostly just sticks around them. Apparently, the character was imposed on Moore, and at that time, he wasn't very comfortable or confident writing female characters, which led to her being unremarkable. That's something he later regretted in an interview. I couldn't find a reliable source for that interview though, so take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, let's move to the next characters. Ozymandias is often called the smartest man in the world. He's a self-made billionaire who retired from hero work before masked vigilantes were outlawed. He turned his fame into a massive business empire, branding himself on everything from action figures to cosmetics. He's extremely calm, charismatic, and physically gifted, almost to a superhuman level. He admires historical figures like Alexander the Great and Ramesses II and sees himself as someone with a responsibility to help shape the future of humanity. The comedian is already dead at the start of the story, but his past still matters a lot. He's a morally ambiguous figure who carried out the government's dirty work. He saw society and life as a joke. He is a nihilist with little empathy who wanted to be the one laughing at the absurdity instead of being part of it. He believed that beneath all the ideals, order, and politics, people are inherently selfish, cruel, and chaotic. Any effort to change or stop it was pointless because wars and violence were the natural result of human nature, and people working towards peace, politics, and vigilante work were simply trying to act noble. This is best captured in his line to Dr. Manhattan. Once you realize what a joke everything is, being the comedian is the only thing that makes sense. And as Dr. Manhattan said, he understands perfectly, and he doesn't care. That mindset is something the comedian uses to justify the horrible things he does to others. And yet, he doesn't fully believe in it. He's ultimately a self-serving hypocrite, just like the rest of them.
What about the artwork?
The art is solid, though since it's from 1986, the style, especially the coloring, can feel a bit old-fashioned. The original version uses very bright, bold colors, while the 2019 edition tones them down to softer, more subtle shades. There's also a black and white Noir version, but I wouldn't recommend starting with that. The comic is full of small background details you can easily miss. If you want to catch everything, there's Watchmen the Annotated Edition. It's also in black and white and explains every panel in detail, though it's a heavy read. The coloring in Watchmen matches its serious and realistic tone. The world looks believable, not flashy or overly stylized, which fits the story's darker themes. The comic mostly uses a 9-panel grid layout, which keeps the pacing steady and helps the story flow smoothly. It often follows a show-don't-tell style where the art, especially characters' facial expressions, does a lot of the storytelling, but some of it is easy to miss if you're not paying close attention.
Any final thoughts?
Ultimately, I think Watchmen is worth reading even if you need to take breaks to finish it. It'll definitely leave you reflecting and might even change how you see certain things. Overall, a solid 8 out of 10 comic book series to me.